Well, at least it wasn't the hash-slinging slasher. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1922 silent German horror film, Nosferatu. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Nosferatu stars Max Schreck, Gustav von Wangenheim, and Greta Schröder, and was directed by F.W. Murnau. Based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, it tells the story of Thomas Hutter, who's sent to meet Count Orlok of Transylvania, only to find that their business transaction has more dire consequences than expected. So you might be looking at this review and thinking, Nosferatu? In March? This is random. And while I would normally agree that this might be a review better suited for 13 Nights of Halloween, today is actually the perfect day to discuss this film. Because exactly 100 years ago today, on March 4th, 1922, Nosferatu premiered at the Berlin Zoological Garden. But this is more than just a fun piece of trivia, because history is such an important factor when it comes to discussing this film. Not only the history of the movie itself, but also the trajectory that film history ended up taking as a result of its release. Nosferatu is essentially an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which had only been published 25 years before. Despite some name changes and alterations to the plot, Stoker's widow wanted to sue over copyright infringement, and eventually won a court case to have all the copies of this film print destroyed. Most were destroyed, but several prints managed to survive, ensuring this film's spot in cinema history and its influence on decades of film to come. Despite its prevalence in general horror pop culture and the obvious influence it had on countless other films, I, like many other people my age, was first introduced to Nosferatu by a very unlikely source. SpongeBob SquarePants. The iconic Graveyard Shift episode, which focused on the infamous hash-slinging slasher, bizarrely incorporated stills from Nosferatu as part of a gag that obviously went over the heads of 99% of the audience, including 12-year-old me. But it was so random and so weird that it stuck with me for 20 years. Like many other historically important films, I first watched Nosferatu in a cinematography class I took in high school. But like so many of these films, we watched it for analysis rather than entertainment, meaning I saw the movie in 5 to 10 minute chunks followed by lengthy discussion. This was repeated in college, and while it ensured I developed an appreciation for the film, it didn't give me an opportunity to develop an affinity for it. Because of this movie's history and its survival due to a series of partial cuts, there are actually several versions of this film out there. So before I dive into the review proper, I want to note that I'm basing my review on the 94-minute Kino Lorber version. Other than the replacement of the original German intertitles with English ones, this version is purported to be one of the most historically faithful restorations of the original film, and seemed like an appropriate cut to base this review on. For me, it has always been Nosferatu's technical elements that stand out above everything else. With that in mind, a 100-year-old silent film needs to be approached a bit differently than a new film. Things that seem benign or archaic now were groundbreakingly inspirational back then. Films of the silent era varied in quality, just as they do now, but this particular movie really excelled at a lot of things. The production design, costumes, and makeup, for instance, all helped to set the stage and mood exceptionally well. The editing is also very strong. The intertitles obviously break things up some, but there are certain sequences without them that are edited together in a way that was well ahead of its time. This film is full of iconic horror imagery, but my favorite thing about the look of this movie is the color tinting. It's easy to assume that a 1922 film would be black and white, but Nosferatu actually isn't. Instead, it used a tinting process, whereby sections of the film were dyed. This is quite different than the multicolored film images that we think of when talking about traditional color movies, but it goes beyond the blacks, whites, and grays you may be expecting. This color tinting adds to the mood, but most importantly, tells us necessary information about timing and setting. Daylight scenes are tinted yellow, while nighttime scenes are a teal blue. Indoor candlelit scenes take on a more amber quality, while sunrise and sunset are tinted variations of pink and purple. Color tinting was not invented for this movie, nor was it a particularly unique concept at the time, but it's used so effectively here, providing us with important contextual information without needing to break up the flow of the film with intertitles to convey that same information. From a plot perspective, Nosferatu is a bit of a mixed bag. Given its origins, the story's obviously heavily influenced by Dracula, though of course predating the movie version by 9 years. There are some semi-significant changes to the story, but the basic gist of things remains the same. Nosferatu is broken up into 5 acts, designated by title cards. The first 2.5 acts are pretty solid. The story's interesting, the character focus is done nicely, and is reasonably well-paced and tense. But halfway through that 3rd act, and the film as a whole, things take a tedious nosedive. The focus shifts away from our main characters to a more communal terror type of thing, and while it certainly has its good moments, it really drags until the finale. Unlike Dracula, Nosferatu is very streamlined from a character perspective. We've only got 3 main characters whose various terrors are focused on. These characters are fine, especially in the first half, with the typical overacting of a silent film in order to get the emotions across wordlessly. But the big character draw here is definitely Count Orlok. He's the exact opposite. Rather than overacting, he's hauntingly stiff, creepily lurching through all of his scenes. He's certainly not a subtle vampire, making clear allusions to his true nature and plans, but Max Schreck's performance, as well as the ghoulish makeup, have a lasting impact, not only on the film, but on horror in general. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 has gotta be the technical aspects. This movie is 100 years old, but it did some groundbreaking things whose impacts still reverberate through film today. Films of the silent era obviously had to contend with delivering a story without spoken dialogue. As a result, they often feel overly choppy because of all the intertitles, or excessively light due to the absence of intertitles. This movie finds the right balance, while also allowing for some uninterrupted sequences where the editing can shine. The creative use of color tinting to establish setting and time also greatly contributes to this, and is one of my personal favorite elements of the film. And then you've got the eerie set design and lighting, which together make some iconic shots that are still marveled at today. The second pro is Count Orlok. Much like Count Dracula is the true star of Dracula, Count Orlok is the star of Nosferatu. His screen time might not compare to some of the other characters, but he certainly makes the biggest and most haunting impact. We've had many vampires on screen since, but his stiff otherworldliness is quite chilling. The makeup and costume contribute greatly. Those hands, teeth, and ears are the stuff of nightmares, but Schreck's performance really seals the deal. And the coffin. On the con side, there are a lot of minor things that can be picked on, but most of these are due to age and technical limitations, so aren't really fair criticisms in a 100 years later retrospective. The biggest issue that I think is still very much fair game, however, is how much the second half of this film drags. The first act does a great job of setting things up. Hutter, Ellen, and Orlok are all established, and there's great tension throughout Hutter's journey, and his stay at the castle. But then things just fall apart during the return journey. The plot gets sidetracked by a plague focus, and loses sight of its already established characters, becoming quite dull and aimless, beginning partway through the third act. The finale offers some nice payoff, but the movie never quite recovers from the dragging tediousness. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Nosferatu or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Nosferatu 3 out of 5 paws. This is a film with immense importance, greatly influencing cinema, especially horror cinema. Its technical elements are groundbreaking, and it features a hauntingly memorable villain, but the story itself leaves much to be desired, making it a film whose legacy and impact far outweigh the movie itself. I would recommend Nosferatu to people interested in film history, especially horror film history. Anybody interested in the evolution of cinema is sure to enjoy the technical achievements here, and revel in spotting this film's influential lineage through the years. Fans of vampire stories will get a kick out of this early film telling, and the origin of some vampire tropes we still see today, but the average viewer may find themselves a little bored with this one. If you liked Nosferatu, I would recommend the 1931 version of Dracula. Both films tell a similar story, but Dracula expands on the scares, characters, and themes to create a more fleshed out story. If you enjoy the off-kilter creepiness here and want another silent film, you should check out The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It's another German expressionist horror film that's high on style and supernatural oddities. And if you're in the mood for another early vampire film, you might want to watch the aptly named Vampire. It's another German film, and is actually a talkie, though it still makes prominent use of intertitles. But the real draw here is the moodiness and the visual effects. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Nosferatu? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite vampire movie? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies. The way life should be.